What's up guys, my name's Brandon, and if you just got an M4 Pro or M4 Max MacBook Pro, this video is going to show you the first 23 things that you need to do after unboxing and setting up your machine. Okay, so this first one might be obvious, but I need to address it because it is important. You need to go into your settings, general software updates, and make sure you perform a software update if you have one available so you can take advantage of Apple Intelligence and all of the other new features. Okay, so now let's change up our trackpad settings because by default our cursor moves way too slow and the scrolling direction is not the direction I prefer. So let's go down to the very bottom of our settings down here to trackpad, and right up here we have tracking speed. This is the default. You might want to increase this so your cursor moves around faster, and then also down here we have tap to click, and if you enable that, that means that you don't have to fully press down and click on your trackpad. You can simply tap on the trackpad to click. And then under scroll and zoom we have natural scrolling. I like to turn this off. That way when I scroll my fingers up, the screen goes up. When I scroll down, the screen goes down. And here's one of my favorite little hidden settings for the trackpad. So if you go into your accessibility settings and into pointer control and then go into trackpad options, from here we have use trackpad for dragging. That is turned off by default, but if you enable that and change this to 3-finger drag, I actually prefer this for moving my windows around with 3 fingers. So now you can see I'm not pressing anything. I'm just putting 3 fingers on the trackpad and I can move my windows around very easily. And this works for anything as well. So instead of clicking and moving my file somewhere, I could just use 3 fingers and I can drag all these files into a folder. Now, one of the first things you need to get used to on your MacBook Pro is window snapping. So instead of downloading a third-party application like you had to before, we now have window snapping built in. So if you take a window and drag it to a corner or to a section of the screen, you will see that white outline and you can move it into that section. You could also hold the option key and it will always show the outline right there. You could also go up to window and go into move and resize and then hold the option key and you'll get more options. However, you might notice that I have this little gap in between these windows, and if you're not a fan of that, you should go ahead and change this. So go into your settings and go to desktop and dock, scroll down to the windows section, and right here we have tiled windows have margins. And if we go ahead and turn that off, you can see that the margins go away and we have more space filled up by our windows. And you'll notice that we do have keyboard shortcuts for some of these, but not for all of them. So if you want to add keyboard shortcuts for the quarters, or if you just want to make these keyboard shortcuts shorter, you can do that. So go into your settings, go to keyboard, and then into keyboard shortcuts, and then down to app shortcuts. Click on the plus and then input whatever shows right here. So if I want to do top right, for example, I'll just type in top right and it is case sensitive, and we'll make that keyboard shortcut Command Option R. So there we go. So now if we go into Safari and Command Option R, it puts it up in that right corner. Now it's time to change some of our display settings, and these are going to be very important. So first off, we have our resolution right here. So this is the default, but if you prefer to have more space on your desktop, you can switch it over here to more space. And if you go down to advanced, this is where you have your universal control options. So if you have a nearby Mac or iPad and you don't want your cursor going onto those machines, you can turn this off. And if you're somebody who does color grading, or if you're in graphic design, you might want to turn off True Tone. So that's a setting right there. And then also if we go up to appearance, right here, we have show scroll bars. I like having this set to always, so you can always see a scroll bar when there's something there. And then also for click in the scroll bar, I like that to be jumped to the spot that's clicked. That way when I click down here, it jumps to that spot on the page. Also right here, we have allow wallpaper tinting in Windows. I like to turn that off. You can see the difference there of just this window. It makes it more vibrant, a little bit more white. It's not tinted. And then here's one of the first settings I change on every MacBook. So if you go to the lock screen right here, right up top, we have turn display off on battery when inactive for 2 minutes. That's way too short in my opinion. I like having this set to like 10 to 20 minutes. So we'll do 20 minutes here, and you will have to put in your Touch ID. And you could also do turn display off on power adapter. I like having that set to 20 minutes as well. And since I have Touch ID and I also wear an Apple Watch, I like requiring a password immediately, not after 5 minutes. And by the way, if you want to unlock your MacBook very quickly with your Apple Watch just being on your wrist, you can go into the Touch ID and password section and go down under Apple Watch and make sure to turn that on. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is set up iPhone mirroring on your MacBook Pro, because this is something I find to be extremely convenient, so you don't need to pick up your phone as much throughout the day. So once you have this set up, it is in the dock by default, and you can see this is what it looks like right here. And if you go up to view, you can see the different keyboard shortcuts. So you can make the size of the iPhone smaller or larger on your desktop, and you also have keyboard shortcuts to be able to actually use your iPhone on your Mac. Of course, you can use the trackpad to kind of just scroll through, but you can also use Command 1 to go to the home screen, Command 2 to pull up the app switcher, and Command 3 to pull up Spotlight Search. And something else you'll want to set up is iPhone notifications on your Mac. So this is separate from iPhone mirroring. So if you go into your settings here and then go into notifications, we have an option here for allow notifications from iPhone. And if you turn this on, that will have notifications from your iPhone, even if you are not iPhone mirroring. So even if you're not mirroring, it will actually show you these notifications up here in your notification center. And you'll see this little icon right there that indicates it came from your iPhone. And I would recommend going in here and disabling any notifications that you do not want to receive on your Mac. So this mirrors your iPhone notification settings, but there might be some settings that you don't want to get on your Mac that you do want to receive on your iPhone. So go in here and configure those. All right, so now we want to set up hot corners. So you might be familiar with the quick note by pulling your cursor down to the bottom right-hand corner. Well, you could actually do that for all 4 corners on your MacBook Pro. So if you go into your desktop and dock settings and go down to hot corners, you can see that we have different corners that we can invoke certain actions. So if I want to pull up the launchpad, for example, from the bottom left, I can do that. Now, if I put my cursor down in the bottom left, it pulls up the launchpad. However, I find that I accidentally trigger these way too often, so I need to set a modifier key here. So when you're selecting, hold the option key, and now when you go to select option launchpad, you'll notice that if I put my cursor down in the bottom left, nothing happens until I'm holding option at the same time, and then it launches the launchpad. So if you're going to set your hot corners up, I would recommend using a modifier key like option or command. Okay, so here's a good one for saving space on your SSD. So if you're like me and you got the base 512 gigabyte storage option, you might want to have this set up. So go into your app store, go up to the settings, and then right here we have download and install large apps to a separate disk. So what this will do is it will automatically download and install applications that are over 1 gigabyte in size to your external drive, and that will help you save some space. And speaking of saving space, you might also want to download the Clean My Mac application, which just so happens to be today's sponsor. Clean My Mac spots and removes duplicate files, system cache, and all of the other unnecessary files that for me took up dozens of gigabytes of space on my Mac. And the interface is beautiful and very simple to use. So I just run this smart scan to get a high level overview of what's eating up my space, and then you can go deeper with these sections on the left panel. You have cleanup to clear the cache and junk files, protection to scan for security threats and vulnerabilities, performance to manage background tasks, applications to properly uninstall apps and remove some of the leftover files, and then also My Clutter, which will remove duplicate or similar images, and also large and old files that you might no longer need. So that's all useful, but you probably won't use that on a daily basis. But what I do use on a daily basis is the menu bar add-on. This is so clutch because it shows you everything at a glance. I can see how much space I have left, my CPU and RAM pressure and temperatures, an easy way to see and remove connected devices, and there's even a network speed test built in to test my Wi-Fi speed. So yeah, Clean My Mac not only helps me save time by automating the removal of these unnecessary files, but it also helps my Mac run as efficiently as possible. So if you want to try Clean My Mac free for 7 days, click my link down in the description below. So what's the #1 application you use on your Mac? I will tell you right now what it is. It is the Finder application. There's nothing you use more on a Mac than Finder, and out of the box, it looks like an absolute mess, and there's just way too much going on right here. So let's clean it up. We're going to start by what actually opens up first when we open up Finder in the first place. So let's go up to our Finder and go to Settings, and from here, you can see new Finder windows show, and you might want to have that set to whatever you use most frequently. For me, it's Documents. And while we're we're in these settings, you might also want to go into the sidebar section right here and disable whatever you do not want showing up over here on the sidebar. It's very cluttered by default, and you can remove this very easily right here. So here's the before and here's the after. And if you want to change up the order, you could just drag these to the order that you like. So I like having my desktop, documents, downloads, applications, and then recents. And if you don't like this grid view, you could always just tap right here to change it. And I have mine changed to the list view. I just find that to be easier to see all of my files at a glance. And if you don't want to see all this junk up top, or if you want to add something here, you can just go ahead and right click and go to customize toolbar. And one of the very first things I add up here is AirDrop. I find AirDrop to be something I use all the time, and having that right here in this menu bar, this toolbar, is extremely convenient. So you can move whatever. So I don't use tags, we'll drag that out of there. I don't use this, so we'll drag that out of there. And these little squares are just spaces. So it'll create a space for you. If you don't want that, you can move them. And I want my AirDrop to be all the way over here for easy access. And we'll move share right next to that. And there we go. So now this looks a lot easier and a lot more, convenient for what I actually use. So now if we select a bunch of items and then tap on AirDrop, boom, we can AirDrop very easily. And if you want to change what shows up right here, so like name, kind, date last opened, you could just right click or two finger click right here, and you will be able to change that. So if you want to see the size, for example, you can add that in there. And you could also move these around to wherever you want and also change the size very easily. And something else I like to change is right here in our Finder settings under advanced. When performing a search, I like having this set to search the current folder. That way it doesn't search my entire Mac when I'm inside of a folder. So for example, if I'm searching for benchmark, if I go to search right here, you can see it defaults to searching within that folder and not this Mac. And it also drives me crazy when folders are mixed in with all my other files. So if you want to change that, go into keep folders on top in Windows when sorting by name. That way you can see all of our folders are up top. And here's a Finder setting that's a must. So if you go inside of a folder, inside of a folder, inside of a folder, you might get lost as to where you are inside of Finder. So go up to your view options up here and then go to show path bar. That way it always shows you down at the bottom which folder you're in. It kind of just shows the hierarchy of where you currently are. Now also up here, you might want to show status bar. That way it shows down here how much space you have available at all times without having to go into your settings. And by the way, you could always drag something over here to your favorites as well. If you use a folder a lot, you could always just drag that over there very easily. One that I would recommend that you might use a lot is if you go to the go up top and hold option, you have your library right here, and you can just kind of take library and pull this over here to your favorites. That way you always have access to the library folder, which can be kind of hard to find sometimes. Okay, so I don't know if it's just me, but I'm not a fan of the default recents folder because it shows a lot of files that I don't really want to see, like these ISO files, like, these zip files. I don't really want to see those in my recents folder. So let's make our own. So go up to your file and go to new smart folder. So we're going to go to plus right here. And from here, we can choose the file type or the last open date. So we'll just do the last opened date, and we'll do the within the past 30 days. And then we'll go ahead and hold the option key right here, and it turns that plus into these three dots, and that adds conditionals. So it says, if any of the following are true, it will show up in this recents folder, our smart folder here. And now we're just going to choose the file types that we want to show up. So there we go. I have it set up now to show only files open in the last 30 days that match any of these file types: document, image, or PDF. You can even customize this on specific images as well. So there we go. Now we'll go ahead and click on save, and we'll name this recents and make sure that add to sidebar is selected, and go ahead and save. And now we have our real recents folder right here, and you can see the difference between the two. This is all the junk, 398 items that I don't really need versus the ones that I really want to see in recents, and we have 16 items. So the next thing you want to do is consider getting a Thunderbolt 5 SSD for your M4 Pro MacBook Pro. And that's because the M4 Pro now has Thunderbolt 5 ports, whereas the M4 MacBook Pro has Thunderbolt 4. So Thunderbolt 4 gets you data transfer speeds up to 40 gigs a second, whereas Thunderbolt 5 gets up to 80 gigs a second, and it can also dynamically allocate up to 120 gigs a second for video bandwidth when that's needed. So if you think you're going to need the fastest speeds possible, like even faster than Thunderbolt 4, you should go ahead and check out a Thunderbolt 5 SSD. There are a couple on the market now. Now also brand new on the M4 Pro MacBook Pro is high power mode. So this was previously previously limited to just the Max chips, but now it's on the M4 Pro MacBook Pro. So you can change this inside of your battery section right here. You'll notice that on battery and on power adapter, we have a new option for high power. And when you select that, Apple says that this high power mode allows the fans to run at higher speeds, and the additional cooling capacity may allow the system to deliver higher performance in very intensive workloads. And by the way, something else you might want to change when it comes to your battery settings is down here at the bottom, go to options, and in here we have slightly dim the display on battery. Now, if you do not want your display to dim just because you're not plugged into a charger, you might want to go ahead and turn that off. I'm going to do that myself. And speaking of the battery, you might notice up here in our menu bar that our battery doesn't show the battery percentage, it just shows an icon until we click on it. But I prefer to have my battery always visible up there in the top right, so we're going to change that. Go into your settings, go to Control Center, and then go down until you get to battery, and from here we have show in menu bar that's turned on, but we want to turn on show percentage. Now it's going to show the battery percentage to the left of the battery icon. But it gets even better because also you'll notice that you cannot enable high power mode or low power mode from the battery up top by clicking on that. Well, we can change that. So show energy mode is set to when active by default. You want to set that to always. And now when you go up here, you have quick access to enable low power mode or high power mode. And while we're here, we might as well go ahead and clean up the menu bar as well, because it can become pretty cluttered, especially if you start downloading third-party applications. So you might want to clean this up or move it around at least. So for me, for example, I like having my Wi-Fi over here. So we're going to hold Command and we can move our Wi-Fi icon all the way to the end right here. So if you want to move anything, you can just hold Command and move it to wherever you would like. Now also, if you scroll down here, you can see different things that you can show and hide in the menu bar. So for example, I don't like Spotlight being up in the menu bar. I just think it's a waste of space because you can always press Command space. So Command space is a quick way to pull up the Spotlight search. So you don't need that in the menu bar. So we're going to change that to don't show in menu bar. And then for Siri, you might want to have that showing up there because of the new, Apple Intelligence features. You might want to have that showing up in the menu bar, and you can see all these others as well. The other one I like to change is for the clock. If you go to clock options, you might want to not show AM or PM, just the time up there. And you can also not show the date at all. It'll just show the day of the week and the time. I like having that because you can always see the date down here in your calendar and the dock. Okay, so now we need to learn how to use Apple Intelligence properly. So I did actually make a full video on Apple Intelligence on the Mac, so I will leave that linked down in the description below if you want to check that out. But let's talk about how to use this. So first off, in Apple Intelligence and Siri in our settings right here, you'll notice that we have a keyboard shortcut for Siri. So this is set up by default to press either command key twice. So if I press command twice, it will launch the Siri. So now you see it up there in the top right corner, double tap again, it removes it. So that is there, but if you want to change that keyboard shortcut, you can do that right here to one of these pre-selected ones, or you can go to customize to set up your own keyboard shortcut. So if I want it to be command option S, I can do that. Now it will pull up Siri and I can drag this around wherever I want on the screen. So the first thing is writing tools. So if you select some text anywhere on your Mac, it doesn't have to be in notes. This can be anywhere on your Mac. If you go ahead and right click or two finger press on your trackpad, you will see down here we have a new section called writing tools. And this will allow you to proofread, rewrite. You can make the text friendly, professional, or concise. You could also summarize it, make a list, make a table, and create the key points. And if you go to show writing tools, it will show you this interface right here where you can perform those actions very quickly. So that's great, but it does take quite a while to actually get to that section. Like, you don't want to have to right click, go down here to writing tools, and press proofread every time you want to proofread something. So let's fix that. So if you go into your settings and go to keyboard and then into keyboard shortcuts, and again go down to app shortcuts, click on the plus, and again that menu option is proofread, so we'll just type in proofread right there, and we're going to make the keyboard shortcut for that command option shift P, so that way it's not taken up by something else. Command option shift P. So now when we go back here, command option shift P, it will proofread right away, and you can do that for all of your Apple Intelligence features here on macOS Sequoia. And something else that's pretty cool is inside of the mail we do have smart replies. So if you get an email, you can see that when you go to reply, it will automatically craft out an email for you based on the content context of the email that was sent. And of course, we do have Type to Siri up here as well, which is very handy, and you can see it will show you more context now than it did on previous versions. So you definitely want to take advantage of that, and it will also have ChatGPT built in a future version. All right, so the M4 MacBook Pro is the first MacBook Pro to get the new center stage webcam and also have desk view. So if you're in a FaceTime call, if you're on a Zoom call, whatever you're on, you now have center stage, which allows the webcam to follow you around and keep you in frame. So if you go up to this orange right here in your status bar, you do have the option to turn on or turn off center stage. Also, we have the other, settings right here to make you look better on webcam. Also down here, we have desk view. So this is also new, and this is here for the first time on a MacBook Pro. If you select that, that will give you kind of a top-down view for your webcam. And that just reminded me of something. Let's go ahead into our FaceTime settings, because in here, you might also want to turn off how you can be reached for FaceTime. So if you don't want your phone numbers to be able to get FaceTime calls on your Mac, you can have that turned off right here. And then most importantly for me is calls from iPhone. So I don't want every call that comes to my iPhone to also come to my Mac, so I'm going to turn that off. And while we're at it, we may as well do the same for our messages. So go into your settings for messages and go to iMessage, and from here you might want to turn off what numbers you can be reached by or which different emails you can be reached by. So I don't like being reached by my phone number on my Mac, but I do like it for some of my Apple IDs or my emails that I have set up. And by the way, you might have noticed that my desktop is abnormally clean, but that's not because I don't have files, that's because they're just hidden. So if I click right here on my desktop, you can see the files that I have there. And the way I was able to do that is inside of our settings. If you go down to desktop and dock, right here under desktop and stage manager, I have show items on desktop disabled. So that is on by default, but if you disable that, if you unclick that, it will not show your items on the desktop. And if you don't like clicking to show the desktop and kind of moving your windows out of the way, you can turn that to only in stage manager. Now when I click, it does not show my desktop. All right, so our desktop is looking a little bit boring right about now. So let's go ahead and change that. So we're going to right click right here or two finger press and go to edit widgets. So this is going to show you widgets not only from applications installed on your Mac, but also from applications installed on your iPhone. And it will show that up here in the top right. So for example, if I want to add a weather widget, we'll go ahead and add that right here to our desktop. We'll do the same for batteries. I think batteries is something everybody should go ahead and have. We'll do that. Home is definitely one of my favorites, so we'll add that right here as well. Maybe we want that to be small, so we can right click right there and make that small. We can do that for batteries as well, so that might look a little bit better. We'll move that down there. And then we'll do one more for our calendar. So we can make that maybe over here, maybe a little bit bigger one for our calendar if we have some to-do. So there we go. Now our desktop looks a lot more lively and more practical and set up for more productivity. And by the way, you could also change the look of your widgets. If you go into the desktop and dock settings and then go to widget style, you can change that to be full color or monochrome, or just have it automatic like it was by default. And of course, if you want to use iPhone widgets, you can choose which iPhone you want those widgets to come from. And I just took a look at our dock, and that is hideous. So our dock is way too cluttered right now. I'm not sure why I waited till nearly the end of this video to show you guys how to clean up the dock, but we need to clean up that dock because it doesn't look good. So if you want to remove items, you can just go ahead and right click or two finger press and go to options and then remove from dock. But an easier way to do that is just drag up here onto the desktop and it will remove it. So drag, let go, there we go. All right, so there we go. Looks much better. I also want to move my settings over here, so we're just going to drag that over. I like having that over here next to my Safari, and I like having reminders right here next to my calendar. So there we go. Looks a lot cleaner, but I don't want these recents showing up here either. So we're just going to go ahead and right click right here, and we're going to go to dock settings. And this is where you could also change the size of your dock and change the magnification if you want everything to magnify. So if we make this a little bit smaller and make the magnification, you can see that's what that will look like. You can change the position on the screen from the bottom, left, or right. You could also minimize windows using a different effect, so the scale effect if you would like to, and here's what that looks like. But the main reason we came in here is to not show suggested and recent apps in our dock. So now if we eliminate that, it will disable those recent and suggested applications. Oh, and by the way, you see how the Safari window is minimized over here next to the trash. If you don't want that to show up over there and just take up more space on your dock, you could actually have this minimized into the Safari icon itself if you select this option right here to minimize windows into application icon. So now if we go back and minimize that, you can see it just goes into Safari and it doesn't take up more space on your dock, which is nice. The next thing you need to do is understand how to access the secret menus and the secret options on your Mac, because if you hold the Option key on macOS, this allows you to get access to several additional options that are otherwise not visible. So for instance, pretty much anywhere. This works in any application really. So if you go into Safari, for example, and you go up to the window, if you hold Option, you can see that it changes from zoom and minimize to minimize all and zoom all, or bring all to front to arrange in front. And if you go over to Edit, for example, or File, you can see for File, New Tab turns to New Tab at End, and Close Tab turns to Close Other Tabs. So just things like that. And also if you right click on something, if you want to force quit out of a application, for example, like Safari, if it's being frozen up and it doesn't quit, when you select quit, you can hold Option and force quit, and it will always quit no matter what. And then the final thing I did after unboxing and setting up my M4 MacBook Pro is going into my settings and going into my Apple account and going into iCloud and go into See All right here, and I turn iCloud Drive off. I do not like syncing my documents on my Mac to my iCloud because I like my iCloud storage to be reserved for my iPhone. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect that and remove everything from my Mac if I had it backed up to iCloud Drive. So there we go. Now I have all my space allocated just to my iOS and iPadOS devices. So there you have it. Those are the first things that I personally do every time I set up a new MacBook Pro, and that's exactly what I did here with the M4 MacBook Pro. So I hope this video was helpful. If it was, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Also make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future Mac videos. If you want to subscribe to my Apple Den newsletter to get more tips on your Mac and also for iOS and Apple news, go ahead and check that out. It's in the link down below in the description. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.